To be honest, I didn't enjoy that bit. I kind of was out my depth.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to magically get Chris into the chair. And here we have Chris Howell.
I've dabbled.
Yeah.
I've been told I'm unemployable.
Well, hello there and welcome to the About Small Business podcast. In this episode of the podcast, I'm actually at Howell Media. And I'm going to be chatting in the first half of the podcast to Issy Howell. Thank you for joining me, Issy.
Thank you for having me.
And then Chris is going to be joining me. Chris, the director, is going to be joining me for the second half of the podcast as Issy has to go to a meeting. So, Chris, can you shout hello from where you are?
Hello from where I am.
Thank you so much. Issy, real pleasure. And thank you so much for allowing us to use your studio while my studio is undergoing building work and currently doesn't have a roof.
Oh, so. Well, I mean, it's a nice day for not having a roof, but I think I'd rather...
The builders have been quite lucky with this one. It's lovely and hot. I've kept them fed with a Diet Coke and cheap lollies because my kids keep eating the good stuff.
Well, that's the key is don't have kids. No, but I think that's often what happens, isn't it? Really, but you're more than welcome to appear at Howell Towers whenever you wish.
And that's a pleasure. Right. So Howell Media, you've actually been going in for quite some time, haven't you? Quite an established presence in the Northeast.
Yeah. So we, I mean, Chris will be able to tell you more about about where we kind of the origin story, if you will, yeah. But I can take you from really our current form. We've been around for 2009, I want to say. Chris, shout yes or no.
Yeah.
Yes. So about 2009 when that sort of started, but I came into the business just nearly about 10 years ago now. So that's when we started to identify that the landscape was sort of changing in terms of the world of video production, and it was becoming more accessible. More businesses wanted to use it, and we jumped on that and then named ourselves Howell Media.
Was it always a plan that you would work with your dad?
No, not at all. It was so initially my brother was involved with the business, and my dad and my brother worked together for a few years. He got headhunted and was taken off to a real job, if you will. And when he left, Chris said that there was sort of tasks and things that needed doing, and there was a couple of projects coming up, and then I stuck around to help out, and then I just never left. So I've definitely sort of found my place here, though. It feels like it's not the kind of family business in the sort of traditional sense where I was born into it, really. It's something that we kind of grew organically together, and I started off in the creative industry as a video editor before I got involved in Howell Media. Right. So hopefully I was hireable anyway.
And your mother's an English teacher, isn't she?
Yes, so my mum's an English teacher, and she has a background in marketing and publishing, I believe. But she's kind of, I've grown up around business because my dad's ran businesses and been part of the business world my whole life. So I've been very lucky that I've been able to see that firsthand and see what the highs and the lows and whatnot. But within that, that's really kind of, I've grown up around offices and around business spaces, so it felt like a natural fit, and I think we were both just on the same mission at the same time, and then we ended up working together. Right.
And you've told me that you did go to university. You've told me you did English and history.
That's correct, yeah.
So from your school days, were you a good person, good girl at school, well behaved and everything? I was a massive nerd, so I was definitely good. And again, we've clarified in another podcast. That's a good thing. That is a good thing, and I encourage nerdiness. And I at school, I got away with some strange things. So like at secondary school, you weren't allowed to wear black jeans to school, but because I was good, I often just got away with it anyway, and because I just did the work and showed up and did my thing, no one really pulled me up on it. But I at school I got on okay. I went to a school in a very kind of small town
Herefordshire. So it was a very. I went from a big secondary school in near London, and it was sort of a big, huge sort of 2,000 plus secondary school, to a very small one in a very rural area.
So you've relocated.
Yeah,
north
so we moved sort of west and then up north, but I started in my secondary school that I was at to do my GCSEs. That was in a very rural area, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I didn't really discover that I was any good at film until I got to sixth form, and I was into English and ICT and all of that sort of fun stuff. So yeah.
Right. So did it occur to you to maybe, at the time you must have gone to university, sort of media studies and that kind of thing was certainly growing in popularity. Did that not tempt you?
No, I mean my trajectory into the film industry isn't linear, if you will, because I finished my A-levels in Herefordshire, and then my brother was doing film and TV production at Northumbria in Newcastle, so I thought a lot of my life I was following him, so I followed him up north. But while I was at sixth form, I studied film studies, and that was because I had no idea how to fill that last slot. So I had several choices. I had English and sociology and dance, which we're not going to talk about. But I did have, I just picked film studies because I thought, my brother's done that, so I guess he's survived. It should be all right.
How did you find film studies?
And I really enjoyed it, and that was where I discovered really that I could edit, and where I discovered that I quite liked making films. Chris actually was in my first ever film, and he had the starring role, and I think both him and my mum were sat there in the morning of the day I said I was going to film it, going, I don't know how this is going to go, and I basically just directed the whole thing and edited it and put it together, and it did really well. And I think the guy, the teacher I had called Anthony at the time, told me, you should be in the film industry, so that should be what you should do. Right. But I wasn't prepared for that because I had my English head on. I was very into literature, and I thought I was going to be a teacher and stuff like that, and then moved up north, took a couple of years out, took an internship at a local TV channel, and then to be honest, I didn't enjoy that bit. I kind of was out my depth, and then I thought, right, I don't want to be in the film industry, and then I went and did a degree in English literature and history, thinking I'm not going to be part of this. It's not really for me. But while I was doing that degree, that was when I started working with Howell and doing that. So I ended up, writing long essays on the socio-economic impacts of the Black Death, and then editing some TED Talks. So it was a very sort of different way of doing it.
So what put you off teaching?
For me, nothing really put me off. Something else just pulled my eye. So being part of this business was something that I was thinking, that sounds like a better fit for me. But what I've been able to do in my business or in Howell Media is develop the training side of it, develop the education side of it. Yeah. So I think
it's worth mentioning that's how you and I first met.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was actually doing one of your courses.
Yes.
And for Durham, I can't remember what they were called.
Durham Business Growth.
I think it was.
Was it Business Durham?
Digital Hub or something like that.
Yes, Digital Drive.
Digital Drive.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah.
And
that's how we were acquainted.
We chatted about black magic stuff, not literally black magic, like the.
I have my snake charmer. Yeah. And that was really but those kinds of sessions and those sorts of things, I started doing those and thinking, actually, there's an appetite for learning about stuff as well as me doing it. So that was, I didn't obviously go into the world of teaching, and that's a very impressive and tough profession to be in anyway. So I admire anyone who does that. For me, I thought I could apply my ability to teach people and train people and and pass on knowledge as well as actually doing the work. So we have two arms to our business, one being our actual doing the work, doing the filming, doing the content creation, and the other half is, if you don't want us to do it for you, you can't get away with us not showing you how to do it. So we will cater for both sides, and that means that I can have an impact on smaller businesses, maybe with smaller budgets, or startups, or quite kind of embryonic ideas and stuff, and people wanting to have a go, or different skill levels, and I meet all kinds of people in doing it.
Just out of curiosity, what do you find to be the main difference between a business who will want to actually employ you to engage the services. They want to say, right, we don't want anything to do with this, Izzy. We want you to come down. We want you to take care of all of our content for us. Mm-hmm. So the difference between them and the person that's wanting to do it themselves. So I've got a smartphone. I'd like to get the most out of it. Is it purely budget?
No, it's a lot of it is time, and time is a big impact and has a big impact on people's choices, whether they go professional or do it themselves. But I think both of them have a place. So I mean, I encourage all businesses, whether they be massive, corporations down to one-man bands, small startups, etc., to adopt a mixture of both. Because nowadays, yes, value and beautiful content is absolutely crucial, but having a variety of content, a volume of content is significantly more important. So being able to consistently share content as well as actually having it is just as important. So what I always recommend is people coming away with a bank of stuff, a bank of material that they can use. So yes, it is often people will hire us in, marketing departments will hire us in, businesses will get us in because they need something of a higher quality. It has to have a longer lifespan. The actual content itself is for a big event or a big pitch, or they want to showcase how amazing they look. That's where we come in. But if it's for the smaller stuff, the using content on the day-to-day, the stuff with a shorter lifespan, we don't really have a place there. We think that's better if you get your phone out or you get your camera out and you do your day-to-day. So we find that if we're not making the content, we want to see people using it still, and we think there's more impact in someone being able to do it themselves as well as a great video or a set of videos from us. But at the same time, that's better than having one amazing video and just sharing that once and that's it. Yeah, so
that's it. It's a consistency, everyone, that's for the algorithms and things like that. You mentioned quality, and I believe you've just had quite a significant video going on some boards in Sunderland, if that's...
Yes, so we are one of the production companies working with Culture House Sunderland, and we have on the Expo Pavilion screen in Keele Square, it's a 65-foot screen, I believe, so it's absolutely massive, and we have a film that we've created all about Sunderland, in Sunderland, with the people of Sunderland, for the people of Sunderland.
Which gives people an idea of the quality that you can produce.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's fairly well known that smartphones are doing a great job of catching up. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it's ever going to overtake what you do? Do you think you're ever going to go out to a shoot like the one that you've completed and you've got all you need in a phone?
I don't think I've got... Dad stopped working and he's now watching me. So I could see him lean back and he's now staring at me. For me, I don't think... It's finding that perfect combination. It's like if you bought a really fancy stand mixer, but you didn't have any ingredients, you couldn't really make a cake. But I think for me, having a decent level of creative and technical skill combined with... It could be anything. It could be a simple, basic smartphone camera from a few years ago. I mean, when you think about it, smartphones have only been around for a very, very short period of time.
It's interesting, isn't it?
The camera technology is unbelievable. It's gone from a grainy little sort of CCTV style picture to basically like 6K if you want it. And I think we've never felt threatened by there being a phone in everyone's pocket. My competition is basically anyone with a smartphone. And because there's a place for all of it. There's a place for everyone. And I think that viewers, audience members have a sixth sense for quality. People are very picky now as to the kind of content they choose because there's so much of it now, and it's almost like, where do I even start?
I think as well for a lot of the your reels and things like that, it almost seems like your platforms like your TikTok and your Instagrams almost favour that organic look, the look that isn't quite as polished.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's because there is such a confusion nowadays between what's real and what's not, and that whole thing is being the real people behind the business, or the real people just doing your day-to-day, or being a real person and showing that you're a human with human emotions. It is that connection. And we always say video production or video content, in a commercial sense, it bridges that that trust gap between you and your customer, because they meet you and then they see you and they think, oh, that's the person I spoke to, and they get a feeling for that and they can warm to you a bit more. And I think that's where video in general performs really well. But I think there's a place for everyone. But the thing that always astounds me is how a lot of people, with all of this stuff available to them, a lot of people don't know how to use it and how to use it to the best of their ability and get the most out of it. So that's something that we're really keen on doing.
When you start diving into the iPhone and look at, sort of when you start getting to those deeper settings, you find that, you can adjust things.
Totally. And we encourage it. And I think that if I went into doing what I do every day, being angry that everyone else can do it, how dare they? I think I would end up basically just arguing with myself in a little cage, because I think you've got to embrace it, and we rather people work alongside us on the same mission than us working against everyone.
So that's it. I mean, in terms of everyone getting involved, just sort of before we started recording this podcast, the three of us were chatting about I suppose young people getting involved and being precluded from the industry. And I think it's interesting because I was chatting to someone the other day who I think there's something like sort of some kind of employment coach or whatever that they might have been doing. But they were saying they'd gone to a company and like sort of chatted to a young girl who was doing a basic admin job, and they'd found out that she did actually edit her own video and managed to get almost get a promotion within, because it's like, right, this girl actually uses these skills that you're looking for. And I think most I don't think it's too controversial to say every company needs to do some marketing. If you're enjoying this content, please do like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell to let you know exactly when another podcast's going to drop. Even if it's as basic as word of mouth. I mean, like sort of the builder I use is brilliant, is very reasonably priced, and is booked up. Because he gets that sort of word of mouth, which we all want. But I mean, for certain things, not everyone's going to be able to use your service, are they? It's just...
Oh, totally. And even on our website, there's free stuff. There's our podcast, which is free. With the information that we're giving out, we're not sort of Colonel Sanders with 11 secret spices. we are very kind of... We're very open about the fact that there's no real secret to it. We bring a level of quality that's better than we think that a lot of people could do themselves, but we're not stopping people having a go at that. And I think that in terms of marketing and people's belief in it, it's all about belief. I mean, if you like, the classic example I think is that, do you think McDonald's need billboards? Do you think Coca-Cola need to advertise? Like, these companies market like startups, even though McDonald's could stop advertising now and people would still be queuing out the door and getting whatever they've got going on.
That is interesting, but for how long? As soon as that, because if I'm going out for a burger, quite often, certainly if I've got the kids with me, you say I'm going out for a McDonald's. If I want a drink, a fizzy drink, I'll say I'm going out for a Diet Coke or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm Diet Coke.
but at the same time though, Coca-Cola don't need to be releasing a Christmas ad every year. No. They don't need to, but they choose to, because it's bigger than just the immediate gratification of selling and getting those numbers in.
I'm just thinking of almost a publicity stunt if they didn't do it, if they missed a year.
Yeah, well, they did an AI year last year, and that they released an entirely AI produced ad, which again was a conversation starter, got people talking. But for us, like, I think that we work with companies that believe in what we do. We work with companies that, or individuals or entrepreneurs or organizations and institutions, anything you can imagine, that believe in the value of it, that have a vision, and that see that what they're creating is going to work and it's going to do something, it's going to have an impact. And we're not just the kind of people where we show up, shoot some stuff and go home and that's what you get, there's your video. There's a bigger strategic part of that. There's a bigger, I'll often, in the process of doing the pre-production where I'm finding out what we're filming and what they want to do, you ask questions that they think, oh, I've never thought of that before. And I'll say, well, how is this going to fit into your strategy? How are you going to use this video? Why is it better to have 10 short videos than one long one? Why are you wanting a 5-minute video of someone talking about, I don't know, like electronics? Why who's going to watch it? Who's your audience? How are you going to hook them in? What's the story? So I start, when you work with and I'll ask those questions to people who are being trained as well, because often thinking like that, it's less about just churning out content for the sake of it because everyone's doing it. It's thinking, I have a tool in front of me, how can I use it to get the most out of it, basically? And we help people reframe that, is that video isn't the answer. Video isn't the answer to anything other than unless you use it right and you use it consistently.
Yeah, and it is probably at the minute the most important media, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you're leaning against an open door there, because yes, I was 100% yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally regarded. I suppose your job has become broader with that sort of marketing knowledge. But I'm just curious if when you've met with a client, they've had really fixed ideas on what they want. Just what you mentioned, if someone sat talking for 5 minutes, and you've sat there and you've tried your best to advise. Have you had many clients that have just ignored everything that you've said no, I want this, I'm paying the bills?
Yeah, I'm being very careful what I say. I mean, to be honest, yes, we have had.
How does that make you feel?
Often, I mean, if you were in a boat and someone came past you with a lifeboat and your boat was sinking and they said, "Hey, come on, I can help you," and you went, "No, I'm all right." You just got to kind of let them. Like, I think there is that let them theory. There's all that stuff where you gotta. There's only so much you can do, and if you give someone expertise and they reject it, then there's nothing really that you can do.
Yeah.
And I think that you just kind of have to say, great, well, okay, that's fine. And we're giving what we can offer, but you have to believe in it. And if people only think about budget from the very start, if they only think about sort of things that don't really fit in with what the overall vision is, they're never going to care about what it looks like at the end. So but that being said, that is a minority, and we're very lucky that in the time that we've been doing this, the largest majority of our clients, they're repeat clients. They love working with us. We've got clients that have been working with us longer than I've been alive, and that in itself to us is a testament that people do believe in it, people do want it, and there are a few people out there that don't, but I don't care about them. I'm focused on the ones that matter. But I'm going to swap now with my...
I'm going to say what I'm going to do is I'm going to magically get Chris into the chair. And here we have Chris Howell, the director. Chris, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for inviting me. I didn't have far to travel.
You did no. No, you came from outer space, Chris.
Exactly.
But thank you for agreeing to do this for us. Right. So we've had all sorts of chats. I've visited your podcast, obviously. Yeah. We'll get a link
we'll
down
do
below.
A reciprocal thing.
I think that would be a good idea. And we have had some interesting chats. We're of a similar age.
Yep.
With similar views. We have similar views on texting. You, like me, will make sure you use full stops in your text, and we've both learned that can actually be taken as quite aggressive, haven't we?
Today's been a revelation, hasn't it? that a full stop can be aggressive. I know, that's a new one on me. But
me too.
But like I say, every day is a school day, so we'll keep learning and
absolutely
and adjusting accordingly.
So the first question I have here is what's it like working with family?
What's it like working with family? It's fantastic. I don't know if Izzy mentioned, but my son Tommy, he worked in the business, and he's gone off and is doing his own thing. I really like it. I think that being in a family business, I suppose it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Insofar as you really know each other. Yeah. And I think that the kind of the nuances that perhaps you wouldn't pick up with just a regular colleague, which most people have, kind of aren't there. So, I kind of got I'll know if something's getting to Izzy, as an example. There's a different layer of kind of understanding there. It's obviously deeper, but we do run quite an interesting sort of work and home life mix. So insofar as if and when we find ourselves together outside of work, we don't talk shop at all. So we don't talk customers, lenses, projects.
Quite a professional.
Yeah, so we do have quite we are the time we're together and it's work time, we're working, and the time that we're together and it's not work time, we're not working.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's a, you know, as you know, it doesn't really matter if you run your own business, whatever line of work you're in, it can become all enveloping, and it can become
absolutely particularly when it's your own business. It's very difficult to switch off sometimes.
We're quite strict in that, and also although we're quite out there in terms of, you know, we've both got quite a strong presence online. We've both got you know, I'm quite well known in the sort of wider business community.
Yeah.
But we're actually quite private as well. So I quite like that. I quite like that barrier. It's not a barrier, but we're not. You know,
it's segmented. Your life is segmented, so you've got very much your family life.
Yeah.
Which, and I mean, it seems to me like sort of seeing the two of you together. Now, I have seen you both together, even from photographs and videos that you've done, and you can tell that your family. You can tell there's something deeper level of affection that I think you only get from family.
And I suppose that also at times, you know, with people that work with us and work for us, that we have to be quite mindful that you're not an outsider. If you're working in the business or you whatever it might be, that we don't want a them and us situation. So we'd I know this might sound a bit sort of cliched or hackneyed. We'd rather welcome people into the family, as opposed to being them and us.
I think, to be fair, I mean, I've come down, as I've already mentioned, to use your studio for recording this podcast, having recorded a session for your own, and I firsthand, I felt very welcome. You know, from both of you. As I said, I'd met Issy before. This is the first day I've met you, and it kind of feels like we've known each other for a while. I think again, maybe a generational thing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I try and I'm quite a simple organism, really. I just the basic stuff. I just try and treat people and treat situations as kind of as friendly, because there's enough negativity in the world.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to add to that. And it's kind of like I can't. Although I said, you know, I've got we're quite private in our sort of home life.
Yeah.
I can't be tough. I can't be tough at work. You know, it's the kind of thing people say. Oh well, you know, you should be as an entrepreneur, you should be grinding people into the ground, and it's not. You know, it's not that you should succeed; it's the other guy should fail. And I can't be bothered with that.
No,
at all.
I think that is a really interesting point, because for me, people like that kind of ruin the planet.
Well, they do. They're just. I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered with negative people saying negative things. I can't. And obviously we got to stay off sort of, was it politics and religion and whatever. But when you just see horrible people on the TV or whatever, and whether they might be global leaders or whatever role they've got. Yeah. Again, mentioning no names. I don't want to get hoiked off somewhere. I just think to myself, why are you going to be like that?
I know.
Why do you feel like that?
You've got everything, but it's not everything. You know, you're not satisfied with that.
You know, I've got a very strong social conscience. I've got a very, you know, I celebrate people's success. You know, I've been lucky. I've been successful in business, but I've been more successful in life and stuff. But you know, like when you look at, again, super mega billionaire global people, and it's almost like, well, how much money do you want? Yeah. If you've got 10 billion, why do you not want to pay tax to get like 12 billion? Like when is enough?
I think that's crucial.
When is enough?
Yeah. It's that what's enough, and I think that's a really important question for any entrepreneur. Yeah, and I think interestingly enough, because we were chatting about education earlier on, I think that those sort of philosophical issues, which I think a lot of people, like those you've just been talking about, will perhaps dismiss this as like sort of nonsense.
Yeah, nonsense.
But I think it is. If everyone could just answer that question, you know, right? At what point is it enough?
Yeah.
When is it enough?
And when sorry, I cut you off there, but and I think that that is a what I don't want in my life, whether because running a business is hard, as you know.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you can't dress it up. It's
stressful. It's stressful.
Lonely. It's lonely. It's relentless.
Yeah.
It's you know all the cliches around. You know, I work 80 hours a week for myself, so I don't have to work 40 hours a week for someone else. It's almost like at times you just question the sanity of the whole thing.
I do wonder if, because you're working in an industry that you've been in for a long time, you know it, you love it. This is a passion for you, and I'm guessing that you could possibly sell up and not really need to carry on.
And
I'm just thinking about that, and perhaps if we could encourage schools, just people in general, to follow that kind of passion. Because I mean, my motivation for starting this podcast was about this very kind of passion that you clearly have.
Well, what I would say is I've worked in the creative industry my entire career. I've never had a real job.
Yeah.
And that's been various parts of the creative industry. So I've worked as a graphic designer.
Yeah.
I've owned and run quite a large digital agency in the southeast of England. I've owned a printing business. I've owned a fashion brand, a clothing business.
Are you originally from down south?
No, I'm originally from Nottingham.
Right, okay.
And we moved down south, and we've kind of pinballed around a little bit. And weirdly, one thing that kind of technology allowed me to do was I had a realization one day I could live and work anywhere.
Yeah.
My work was me sat in front of a computer communicating with people. That was essentially my job, because I stopped going on shoots and being the guy carrying cameras and doing that stuff. A, because I'm the worst at it in the business, and B, because I don't want to do that anymore. And
you can't, but that's a lovely shot that you set up for me.
I don't mean to be, it's probably blurred now. I don't mean to be facetious, but that's kind of the choice I made. So my role basically is I talk to people, often online, and I sit in front of my computer. So then we had a kind of like a moment. We thought, well, actually, we can live anywhere. So we moved to the countryside in Herefordshire for a while. We moved to Spain for a little bit.
Right.
There's a whole story there. And we've kind of bounced around, and oddly, it was when my son and Izzy were at university up here, that we almost followed them.
Yeah.
So we kind of did it the other way around. So, and again, I quite like the idea that you can try different things, and the work's always just work, isn't it? It's like
So have you ever actually worked for anyone else then?
I have. I've dabbled.
Yeah.
I've been told I'm unemployable.
It tends to be with a lot with.
So a lot of people. I have dabbled, but I would say in my 30-odd year career, I've probably worked for other people on and off for maybe 3 years of that. So
right. Did it never occur to you that that might be a scary way of life, that with a lack of certainty, security?
I've always, well, this is another probably I've always been a risk taker in life, and it kind of goes a lot of. I don't want to be. I'm a creative guy.
No, go for it.
But I've always been, and it used to manifest itself in sort of risky behaviour around. I was doing extreme sports before they were extreme, as an example. So I'm that kind of irritating person that, if there's a big red button on the wall that said "Do not press,"
you're going to press the button.
I'd fall over myself to press it because I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
Do not walk on the grass is literally an advert for please walk on the grass and see what happens. I'm an annoying person in that regard, and I think that when you're a risk taker, it can backfire seriously. But I've always backed myself.
Yeah.
And I don't really care how people take that. I've always backed myself.
Yeah.
I know my own skill sets. I now know my own limitations. It's taken a while, and I kind of want to know what happens next. So I will jump into something, and then figure out kind of how it's all going to fit together. It
does really lend itself to the entrepreneur. Yeah. So I mean, in terms of your school time, then, was it something you enjoyed? Was it something, or were you the?
Well, okay. So my school time, I really enjoyed school. Yeah. But I wasn't a model student. But I did go to quite a progressive and an experimental secondary school. Oh, so right. My secondary school was a kind of a late 70s, kind of early 80s experiment in a different way of doing education.
Go on.
So basically we had. So weird thing. I've never worn a school uniform in my whole life ever.
Yeah.
Throughout my entire school. So,
I think certainly when we would have been at secondary school, they were falling out of favour a little bit.
So I've never had a school uniform. And basically, my secondary school, I don't know what the model was. I mean, obviously your background's education. So we had it was very informal. So teachers and students were kind of on a first name terms.
This is interesting because I've just been trying to think about what was going on around about that time, but I thought that came a lot later.
Well, we had 10 sessions a week. So you do like a session, you do a lesson in the morning and a lesson in the afternoon. So you do straight through kind of 2.5 hours of English and you're done for English, or then you do maths and you're done for maths. But my school was big on art and drama and sport, and that was where I was. I mean, art was my thing. I've always been a gifted artist. I haven't, weirdly, I think I peaked when I was about 11. I was almost like, wow, and I don't actually think I've
we've got improved. A lot in common. I don't think I've improved since I was about
exactly.
that age either.
So basically I was both lucky and unlucky in the school that I went to.
Was your school fee paying?
No.
Because God, no. I think it's just interesting with you saying with your school, the biggest difference, because obviously with my job I travel around lots of different schools, the biggest difference I see with fee-paying schools and state schools isn't behaviour, isn't politeness of the children. I've not actually been an observed teaching, but I find it difficult to accept that because there's not, to my knowledge, no massive differential in pay. I'm not convinced that the teaching is going to be significantly better in fee-paying schools. No. But the biggest difference I've witnessed, I mean, obviously taking aside a class size, is the proliferation of the arts. Everything that you're talking about there, sport, art, music, every kid is carrying around an instrument, they're all in sports kit.
And I love that. I love the fact that, and we, in our school, it was kind of it's basically like an original community setting. And if you think, I mean, we had...
Was it a big school?
Yeah, it's quite big. Yeah, but it was also that it was a strange model that there was no so there's no playground or no sports facilities at all. So it's almost like a imagine a university for 11 to 18-year-olds.
Yeah,
it was that kind of setting. So we had and it was a community centre as well. So we had an ice rink and indoor bowls, and we had incredible sporting because the community were using it as well.
I was going to say, so shared facilities.
Yeah. So we had 3 licensed premises on so it's a school but had a pub that in the but not in the school, but
I know what you mean.
Kind of there's coffee bars, and it was quite, I mean, it was really quite progressive, and at the time you didn't realise, but then I suppose.
Did it produce many people like you?
Yes, it did. And weirdly, there's quite a few successful writers, quite successful TV people, quite successful sporting people that went to that school.
Now, isn't that interesting?
But then, if I were to flip it round, though, it may have failed me a little bit in English and maths and the traditional stuff, because
given where you are,
yeah,
did that matter?
No, not at all. But I suppose, but then my getting back to the risk taking thing, I kind of just did what I wanted, and if that meant, hey, can we start a heavy metal band in the school? Yeah, that's fine. What do you need? Oh, we need an electric guitar. Okay, we'll try and get you an electric guitar. Is that kind of setup, or and weirdly, it was only when it came to think about careers or whether I was going to do further education or that kind of stuff that kind of arty cocoon I was in was broken open. And I was in the right. Well, what's it going to be down the pit or in the steelworks? Oh no, kids around here don't become graphic designers. And it's almost like, well, okay, what am I going to do? And weirdly though, then I did move away really young. I literally moved away because I wanted to work in design. I wanted to be a designer. Yeah. And I just went and did it. So it did, and I think the school did equip me and a lot of the kids like me with the confidence to do that.
If I can pull you back to what you were saying about maths and English, I think it's interesting. Do you genuinely feel as though it let you down? If so, in what way? Or is it just because there's a broader expectation?
I think with the context of now, education now, it didn't let me down. If anybody's ever let me down, it's me. In my life, I think in reality, generally speaking, people are all right. I suppose not let me down. I suppose what I mean is that I didn't do brilliantly in those subjects, and I know I could have done if I'd have knuckled down to do it. And I perhaps felt like a bit more stick and a bit less carrot. In my case, might have steered me a bit towards the realities of life, in the sense that school to me was actually it was quite good fun, really, because I was doing a lot of what I liked. I basically liked drawing stuff, bashing on drums and kicking a football around. And once in a while you had to do a bit of writing and a bit of adding up, and in a way perhaps a bit more of a realistic approach about adult life it's
interesting because I'm kind of thinking from a perspective of what we're talking about in our other podcasts as well, is I almost feel like the current system is really lacking what you had. And I think it's interesting because the last sort of roundup of education changes, the idea was we want to make the state sector more like the private sector, but it's not, because what the private sector are doing is more like what you were doing.
Just to sort of again throw back to when you were saying about the private sector and the kind of like the public sector, it's interesting. We do as a business, we do quite a lot around sort of giving taster sessions to young people, having people come in on shoots with us. Issy does a load of stuff on training, and then we're one of the very few media companies that do work experience. We do value and see the value in people coming to us. We will not take anybody on a non-paid internship type stuff. If you're working with us and you're not in education and you're working with us, we'll pay you. We don't do the hey, come and work for us for 6 months to get some experience or get access to my black book. We don't buy into that one bit. But what is quite interesting, that we do sometimes do events where, kind of like where the local authority takes over a hotel, and busloads of kids come in and they kind of meet the potential employers, and there's a whole bunch of industries in there. One thing I do find, which does break my heart, is that when the kids come from private schools, they are very engaging. They are the questions they ask are very they are very much part of the conversation, and they are bags of confidence. When the kids come from the state schools, and this is obviously a sweeping generalisation, a lot of the times they're either messing around and they're there for a DOS and it's a bit embarrassing all round, or they just have got nothing. They've been sent somewhere to talk to them, and whether that's a case of they don't feel like they could ever work within the media industry, so this is just not for them, or whether that confidence just isn't there or whatever, and that is something that's anecdotal. That's something that
I think
that I have experienced. What I want to see, I want to see a bit more energy and a bit more kind of interaction and a bit more.
How do you get that? Because I do agree with you, and I can see exactly what you're saying. But what do you think the solution is?
I think the solution is it's probably really deep. It's probably about social media. It's probably to do with because how do I phrase this? I think there is a danger that and again, I'm not beating up on teachers or anybody that because it's a tough gig, but I do think there's a narrative that is almost like self-perpetuating. It's almost like kind of we're poor kids from a poorer background or a challenging background, so we don't do this and we don't do that, and that's not for us. And actually, I'm a firm believer that everything's for everybody. And if you crack on, and because again, I'm often asked, like, can you give us one bit of advice for anybody that want, and the simple answer is do the work. That is always my answer. Do the work. So I suppose what I would like to see is more of a shift towards maturity. So that's the other observation I'd have as well. A lot of youngsters seem quite immature in their the way they behave, in their outlook, in what they're saying.
Ironically, probably not their intention.
No, not at all.
They're trying to act too old, too cool for this.
Yeah, but actually, you've got to, if you really want to do it, get into it. But then I don't know. Maybe I'm being too kind of hard on people. But I think though that there is a danger that you can create your own narrative around this. This is not.
I must be honest. I'm not one of these people that thinks hard work can get you anywhere. But what I do believe in is that hard work will improve your situation. I think we can get into all sorts of philosophical discussions about what work actually means.
By hard work, I don't mean kind of. I mean like if you want to make films for a living, go and make some films.
Yeah.
That is literally it. If you want to make films for a living, contact me and say, can I come and spend a day with your team when you're making a film?
Yeah.
And I think that just by having because the worst thing we can say is no. And what is, as you've probably gathered, we can chat for hours. And the one thing I have noticed is that the creative industry, and particularly kind of where I'm, my background and the level that we're at, want people to do well.
Yeah.
And they will give. There is time out there to.
I think it's important that people do well. Isn't it? That we encourage the next generation coming through. But no, I think that is absolutely fantastic advice.
Thank you.
Chris, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.